In a quiet mansion on the outskirts of the city, a wealthy man returned home earlier than expected. He was excited to surprise his bride-to-be with dinner plans, but instead, he froze in shock. From the hallway, he heard the faint cries of his elderly mother, and the harsh, cruel voice of the woman he thought he loved. What he witnessed that night would not only change his future, but leave everyone speechless. David Whitmore was the kind of man people envied from a distance. At just 40, he had built an empire in real estate, lived in a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city, and was engaged to a woman everyone thought was the perfect match. But those who truly knew David understood that his real pride wasn't in his business or wealth, it was in the quiet, unwavering devotion he had for his aging mother, Eleanor. Eleanor had raised him single-handedly after his father passed when David was just a boy. She had worked long nights at a diner, saved every penny, and never once complained. Even now, at 78, her hands bore the calluses of years of sacrifice. David often told people that every brick in his success was laid by his mother's resilience. To him, she wasn't just family, she was his foundation. That afternoon, David wrapped up an important meeting earlier than planned. As he stepped into his sleek black car, he thought about the woman waiting at home. His fiancée, Claire. They had been engaged for 6 months, and the wedding was just around the corner. David had been planning a surprise trip for the two of them, hoping to show her how much he valued her presence in his life. Today seemed like the perfect day to reveal it. As the car turned down the tree-lined drive toward his mansion, David smiled to himself. He pictured Claire's delighted face, imagined her rushing to hug him when she saw him home early. He thought of his mother too, perhaps sitting in her favorite armchair by the window, sipping tea and knitting as she always did. The thought filled him with warmth. When David walked into the grand foyer, the house was unusually quiet. Setting down his briefcase, he loosened his tie and headed down the hallway, rehearsing how he would announce the surprise. The air smelled faintly of lavender, his mother's favorite fragrance. But then, faintly, he heard something that stopped him mid-step. A sharp voice. Not his mother's soft tone, but something harsher. The smile faded from his face as he strained to listen, a ripple of unease stirring in his chest. He had come home early to share joy. Instead, he was about to uncover a truth that would change everything. David froze in the hallway, his pulse quickening as the harsh tone grew louder. It wasn't just sharp words, it was cruelty. "You old woman, how many times do I have to tell you?" Claire's voice, usually dripping with charm, was cold and venomous. "You're useless. Can't even pour tea without spilling. Do you know how embarrassing you are? When I'm married to David, you'll stay hidden. People don't need to see this pathetic side of the family." David's chest tightened. His fiancée's voice, poisoned with disdain, didn't sound like the woman he thought he knew. Then came another sound. A quiet whimper. His mother. "I'm sorry, dear. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be. I'll be more careful next time." "Sorry. That's all you ever say." Claire snapped, and suddenly there was the crash of porcelain against the floor. "Clean it up. On your knees, since you're already halfway there." David's eyes widened in disbelief. Rage and heartbreak twisted inside him. He stepped quietly toward the living room, peering in. There, the truth unfolded before his eyes. His mother knelt on the floor, trembling as she tried to pick up shards of broken teacup with her frail fingers. Claire loomed above her, arms crossed, lips curled into a sneer. Gone was the graceful, caring woman David had once believed in her place stood a stranger, someone capable of humiliating the very person he cherished most. The sight seared itself into David's soul. He wanted to rush in immediately, to pull his mother into his arms and shield her. But for a brief moment, he stood in stunned silence, his world collapsing. How long had this been happening? How many times had his mother endured Claire's cruelty while he remained blissfully ignorant? Eleanor's hands shook as she whispered, "Please, Claire. Don't be angry. I'll clean it. Claire scoffed, her eyes glinting with cruelty. You're lucky David doesn't see what a burden you are. If it were up to me, you'd be in a home already. That was it. David's grief boiled into fire. His jaw tightened, fists clenched, and his steps echoed across the floor as he finally entered the room. His mother's tear-filled eyes darted up in shock, while Claire spun around, her face draining of color when she saw him standing there. The mask was about to shatter. The room went silent. Claire's smug expression evaporated the instant she saw David. He stood tall in the doorway, his face pale but his eyes burning with restrained fury. David, she stammered, forcing a nervous smile. You're home early. I was just. Just what? His voice cut like glass, calm but laced with thunder underneath. Tearing down the woman who raised me. Humiliating her in my own home. Claire's mouth opened, then closed. She tried to regain her composure, straightening her dress. You don't understand. I was only trying to teach her. She makes mistakes, she embarrasses herself. I was helping. David's jaw clenched, his hands trembling at his sides. Helping? Is that what you call this? He gestured to the floor where his mother's frail hands bled from picking up porcelain shards. She gave me everything she had in this life. And you, someone I trusted to stand by my side, you treat her like she's disposable. Eleanor whispered weakly, David, please, don't be upset. It was nothing. But David knelt beside her, gently taking her trembling hands in his. No, Mom. It's not nothing. It's everything. His voice softened for her, but his eyes snapped back to Claire with a fire that could not be extinguished. Claire scoffed, though her voice wavered. You're overreacting. You've seen how clumsy she is. I was only trying to. Enough. The word thundered through the room, startling even Eleanor. Do not lie to me. I heard everything. Every word. Every insult. Every threat. You showed me who you really are, Claire. Her face flushed red, and desperation flickered in her eyes. David, you can't mean that. Think about our future, the life we planned. David stood, helping his mother carefully into a chair before turning back to the woman who was supposed to be his bride. His voice was low, steady, but unshakable. There is no future built on cruelty. Not with you. My mother is my family, my heart, my anchor. If you cannot honor her, you will never have a place in my life. Claire's breath hitched as the reality sank in. She reached out as if to plead, but David stepped back, a wall of resolve between them. In that moment, the power shifted entirely. Claire's mask had crumbled, and David's choice was clear. Claire's eyes darted around the room as if searching for a lifeline. Her perfect posture slumped under David's unwavering stare. For the first time, the charm she wore like a crown had no power. David, please, she said, her tone trembling. You don't mean this. You're angry. You'll regret throwing everything away over this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? David's voice was calm now, almost too calm. Watching my mother, the woman who gave me life, kneel on the floor while you belittled her, that's not a misunderstanding. That's truth. He walked toward the small table by the entrance where a velvet box sat, the engagement ring he had chosen with such hope. With steady hands, he picked it up, walked back, and placed it firmly in Claire's palm. This belongs to someone who understands love, not control. You're not that person. Claire's eyes widened in horror. You can't do this. Do you know who I am? What people will say? David's gaze was unwavering. Yes. They'll say I chose my mother's dignity over your cruelty. And I'll wear that truth proudly. Eleanor, still seated, brought a hand to her lips, tears streaming silently down her face. She hadn't expected her son to return so early, nor to stand so firmly for her. In that moment, she felt both heartbreak for the betrayal he had endured and pride for the man he had become. Claire's composure cracked completely. "David, wait, let's talk about this. We can fix it." But David stepped forward, his voice steady with finality. "There's nothing to fix. You don't just hurt people you claim to love and then call it a mistake. Love is patient. Love is kind. You've shown me none of that." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Finally, David turned to the door and gestured. "Leave this house. Now." Claire's face hardened as she realized the fight was lost. Without another word, she stormed out, the sharp click of her heels fading into the night. The moment the door closed, David turned back to his mother. His anger melted into tenderness as he knelt beside her once more. "You'll never be treated like that again, Mom. Not while I'm here." For Eleanor, those words were more valuable than all the wealth he possessed. The house was still after Claire's departure, the only sound the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner. David sat beside his mother, gently wrapping her hands in a soft towel to stop the bleeding from the shards of porcelain. His touch was tender, filled with the same care she had once shown him as a child when he scraped his knees or caught a fever. "David," Eleanor whispered, her eyes glistening with tears, "you didn't have to do that for me. I never wanted to come between you and your happiness." He looked at her with disbelief, then shook his head. "Mom, don't you see? You are my happiness. Everything I am, everything I've achieved, is because of you. If someone can't love and respect you, then they don't deserve a place in my life." Her lips trembled as she tried to smile through her tears. For so long, she had worried that David's wealth and success might distance him from the values she had instilled in him. But tonight, she saw clearly that her son had not only held on to those values, he embodied them. The next day, word spread quickly among family, friends, and even employees who admired David. Many were stunned to hear that he had broken off his engagement so suddenly. But when they learned why, admiration replaced shock. They respected him not just as a successful man, but as a son who placed love and dignity above pride and appearances. A week later, David hosted a quiet dinner at home for his mother. Instead of wedding preparations, the table was filled with laughter, stories, and the warm glow of family. He raised a glass and looked at her with pride. "This house will always be your home, Mom. And no one will ever take that away from you." Eleanor's heart swelled. She realized that while she had lost much to the years, her strength, her steadiness, she had gained something far greater, proof that the kindness she had poured into her son had not been in vain. That night, as David tucked a blanket around her shoulders, Eleanor whispered softly, "You've given me more than I ever dreamed, son. Not with wealth, but with love." And in that moment, both mother and son knew, true riches are not counted in gold, but in the bonds that endure when everything else fades.